They didn't come with weapons drawn. They didn't need to. The fleet crossed into human space in perfect formation, silent, precise, confident. Every known civilization had yielded when faced with them. Protocol dictated surrender within minutes. Humanity did not respond, no warnings, no fleets mobilized, no visible defenses, just silence. At first, the alien command considered it a sign of fear, but as their sensors began returning impossible readings, that assumption started to collapse. Because something was already there, watching them, and whatever it was, had been waiting. The fleet advanced deeper without hesitation. From a distance, it looked like a flawless geometric formation, perfect symmetry carved into the void. Each vessel maintained exact spacing, synchronized velocity, and absolute silence across all non-essential channels. It was not just a military maneuver, it was a statement. They had done this before, dozens of times. And every time, the result had been the same: submission. Entire civilizations had collapsed before the fleet even needed to fire a single shot. Some surrendered out of fear, others out of calculation. A few tried to resist, but resistance had always followed a predictable curve. Humans, according to the archives, were supposed to fall somewhere in between. That assumption was already beginning to fail. "Report," the High Commander said, his voice calm, controlled, almost indifferent. He had seen this scenario unfold more times than anyone on that deck. "Outer sector clear," the systems officer replied. "No defensive satellites, no orbital weapon platforms, no fleet mobilization detected." A pause. Then, no transmissions. That changed the deck. The absence of response was not unfamiliar, but it was rare. Most species attempted something, a warning, a plea, a negotiation. Humans had done nothing. The commander leaned slightly forward. "Expand scan range." "Already at maximum." "Then push beyond protocol." A brief hesitation, then compliance. The sensors extended into deeper layers, gravitational distortions, quantum residue mapping, dark spectrum sweeps. Still nothing. No fleet, no traps, no signs of panic, just space, empties and quiet. Too quiet. No one said it out loud, but everyone felt it. No one answered immediately. Because silence in war was never neutral. Silence meant something was being hidden, or worse, something was waiting. "Maintain course," the commander ordered. The fleet obeyed. Massive vessels continued forward, crossing a boundary that to most looked like nothing more than empty space. But in human records, that invisible threshold marked the beginning of a controlled zone, not defended, not fortified, just controlled. The difference, though subtle, would soon become critical. Minutes passed, long enough for confidence to settle back into the command deck, long enough for the absence of resistance to start feeling like validation. Then, "Commander," the voice came from navigation, quiet, careful, not alarmed, but uncertain. "Yes, one of the forward ships adjusted its course." The commander frowned slightly. "Clarify. Minor deviation, 0.003 degrees off formation. That's within tolerance." "Yes, sir, but..." The officer hesitated. "But what?" It corrected itself. A pause. "That's expected." "No, sir," the officer said slowly. It corrected without instruction. That answer landed harder than expected. The commander turned his attention fully to the display. "Run command logs. Already checked. No override, no system error, no external signal." Then why did it move? No one had an answer. And that was the problem, because fleets like this did not make mistakes. Every movement was calculated, every adjustment commanded. There was no room for spontaneity. And yet, there's another one. Heads turned. A second ship. Different position, different vector, same kind of correction, small, precise, uncommanded. The deck fell silent, then a third and a fourth. Each shift so subtle, it would have gone unnoticed in any other fleet. But not this one, not here. What unsettled them most was, the systems officer began, his voice tightening slightly, the pattern. "Explain." The corrections aren't random. A longer pause. They're aligning to something. Something? The commander repeated. Yes, sir. What something? The officer didn't respond immediately because the answer didn't make sense. They're aligning to a center point. The commander's eyes narrowed. Where? The officer zoomed the projection outward. Coordinates recalculated, vectors extended, lines intersected, and then the center point appeared. Not ahead of the fleet, not behind, but inside it. No one moved, because suddenly everything looked different. Part 2. No one on the command deck spoke for several seconds. The projection remained suspended in the air above the central table, each ship marked by a pale tactical glyph, each slight trajectory shift, now connected by thin lines that converged toward the same impossible point. Not outside the formation, not ahead, where a gravity source or hidden installation might logically sit. Not behind, where wake distortion could explain the pattern. Inside the fleet. The commander rose slowly from his chair. Magnify. The display obeyed. The officers expected to see a cloaked object, a mine, a drifting mass, some hidden gravitational lure or sensor ghost embedded between ships. There was nothing there, only open space, a patch of vacuum indistinguishable from every other patch of vacuum around it. And yet every autonomous correction made by the fleet's navigation systems was subtly orienting around that emptiness, as if the ships were compensating for the presence of something all instruments failed to register. Run visual confirmation, the commander said. We are. Run it again. A second layer of scans swept the same coordinates, then a third, high-band imaging, polarized thermal contrast, quantum scatter interpolation, micro-lensing analysis, even the old brute force methods that younger officers mocked as obsolete. Nothing. The center remained empty. That answer landed harder than expected, because now there were only two possibilities. Either the most advanced fleet ever assembled was malfunctioning in a perfectly synchronized way, or human space had just demonstrated a capability the fleet did not understand. The deck fell silent. Even command forgot to speak. Then the communications officer looked up from her station, tension tightening her voice. Commander, we just received a transmission. Every head turned. Source? She swallowed once. The center point. No one moved. The commander's expression did not change, but the air on the deck did. What had been confidence a few minutes earlier had become something slower, colder, harder to name. Audio only, he asked. Yes, sir. Any carrier signature? None. Encryption? None detected. A language map? The officer frowned. It's already in ours. That changed the deck. Not because translation was impossible. Almost any advanced species could force machine translation across known linguistic structures. But this was not machine conversion. The grammar, cadence, and emphasis markers were native grade. Whoever sent it understood their language well enough to sound like it belonged there. Play it! The speakers activated. For a moment, only static filled the deck. Soft, grain light, almost delicate. Then a human voice emerged. Calm, unhurried, without strain, anger, or triumph. You are inside restricted space. A pause. Not theatrical, not aggressive, just measured. You were not invited. The commander did not blink. The voice continued. You may leave now. No threats followed, no military boasting, no countdown, no display of force, just that. You may leave now. Several officers exchanged quick glances, not because the words were frightening, but because they were not. The tone lacked every marker they associated with deterrence. No rage, no fear, no defensive urgency, no overcompensation. It sounded disturbingly like a statement from someone already in control. Trace the source, the commander said. We can't. What do you mean can't? No signal path, sir. No relay bloom. No directional bleed. It's appearing across internal audio architecture as if it originated inside our own communication network. Then isolate the system. Already attempted. And? The communications officer looked genuinely unsettled now. It wasn't using the comm system. A murmur almost rose across the deck, but training suppressed it. The commander stared at the center point again. Replay. The message played a second time. You are inside restricted space. You were not invited. You may leave now. This time, people listened differently. The pauses mattered more. The absence of emotion mattered more. What unsettled them most was not the warning itself. It was the assumption behind it. The human voice had not asked who they were. It had not demanded their purpose. It had not attempted negotiation. It had simply informed them that they were somewhere they should not be, and then offered them a chance to correct the mistake, as if the outcome had already been decided. Psychological pressure tactic, said one tactical analyst at last, too quickly, as though speaking the theory aloud might make it solid. Minimalist deterrence designed to provoke uncertainty. We've seen similar patterns in weaker species attempting asymmetrical bluff posture. No one answered immediately, because the theory sounded correct and completely wrong. The commander let the silence linger before asking, do weaker species usually infiltrate autonomous naval guidance and inject transmissions into closed architecture without using the comm system? The analyst lowered his gaze. No, sir. The commander turned to sensors. Any power spike? None. Any life signs at the center point? None. Mass? None. Radiation? Background only. He looked at navigation. And yet our ships are orienting around it. Yes, Commander. He studied the projection for another long second. Then he made the kind of decision that had built his reputation. Advance one line. The deck hesitated. Not from disobedience, from surprise. A fleet commander does not ignore the unknown lightly, but neither does he retreat from a disembodied voice and an invisible point in space with no measurable threat signature. Doctrine had limits, and fear of uncertainty was not meant to replace judgment. Advance one line, he repeated. The order spread. Engines adjusted. The front formation moved. Not fast, not dramatically. Just enough to test the center, enough to see whether the anomaly would react. For 3 seconds, nothing happened. For 5, still nothing. A few officers began to recover the smallest fragments of their earlier confidence. The human warning, perhaps, had been exactly what the analyst suggested. A pressure tactic, a clever one certainly, but still a bluff. Then the lead cruiser vanished. No explosion, no rupture, no flash. One moment it occupied a fixed place in the projection and in the visual field beyond the forward screens. The next moment it was gone. Gone so completely that the mind rebelled against it. Several officers stared, waiting for their perception to correct itself, for debris to appear, for sensor lag to resolve, for some hidden cloak effect to fail and reveal the ship displaced to another vector. Nothing came. Its tactical symbol blinked once and disappeared. The deck fell silent, not the silence of discipline, the silence of shock. Report! The commander snapped. No answer came for nearly 2 full seconds because every station was trying to understand the same impossible absence. Then sensors spoke first. No debris, navigation, no drive flare, engineering analysis, no energy release, communications, no distress signal. Tactical, no weapons lock detected. The commander's jaw tightened. Location? Unknown. Unknown is not a location. We have no transition path, sir. It did not accelerate, fold, jump, breach, or fragment. It is simply absent. No one moved. Every rifle stopped. Every screen suddenly looked too bright. Every officer on that deck understood the same thing at once. The fleet had just lost a warship in the middle of formation without a single detectable mechanism. Then, the human voice returned. Same calm, same pace, same terrifying lack of effort. You were given a choice. No one answered immediately, because suddenly everything looked different. The commander stepped closer to the central table, eyes fixed not on the missing ship, but on the invisible center point. The rest of the formation still curved around like iron filings around a magnetic wound in space. He did not feel fear. Not yet. But something older than fear had entered the deck. Recognition. Not of the technology, of the posture. Humanity was not panicking. Humanity was not reacting. Humanity was not improvising. Humanity had prepared this moment long before the fleet crossed the border. And if that was true, then the vanished cruiser was not the beginning of resistance. It was the beginning of a demonstration. The commander finally spoke, and this time his voice was lower. "Open a channel." The communications officer hesitated. "To the source?" "To the human." A beat, then "Channel open." The commander stood straight, not defiant, not conciliatory, just exact. "This is High Commander Serac of the Dominion Expeditionary Fleet. Identify the mechanism by which you have interfered with our vessels." A pause answered him. Then the same human voice came back, almost thoughtful now. "No." That changed the deck. Not because the refusal was emotional, because it was simple. Absolute. The commander narrowed his eyes. "You have disabled one of our warships." Another pause. Then, "No. You crossed into human space. One of your warships stopped being your problem." Several officers visibly stiffened. That answer landed harder than expected, because there was no threat in it. No arrogance. Just a line being drawn between cause and consequence so cleanly that it felt less like a military exchange and more like a law of nature. The commander looked at the center point again, then at the rest of his fleet, then back into the silence surrounding that invisible presence. And for the first time since crossing the border, he understood that the most dangerous part of human space might not be what humans built. It might be what they understood. And somewhere beyond the sensors, beyond the scans, beyond the reach of every doctrine he trusted, something human was still watching, without hurry, without noise, waiting to see what he would choose next. Part 3. No one on the command deck shifted position, but the posture of the room had changed completely. Confidence had not vanished all at once. Fleets like this were not crewed by amateurs, and panic was not something command tolerated. But there are moments when training stops feeling like strength and starts feeling like ritual. Motions repeated, because the alternative is to admit that the old logic no longer applies. This was one of those moments. The projection still showed the missing cruiser as an absence in formation, a clean gap where a warship of immense tonnage and centuries of combat tradition should have remained. No debris cloud expanded from the point. No system collapse radiated outward. No reactor bloom had marked its death. The void around that space looked untouched, and that was precisely what made it unbearable. Destruction, at least, could be understood. Destruction left signatures. This did not. The commander kept his eyes on the center point and spoke without turning. "Status of the rest of the line." The response came quickly, but not confidently. "All ships operational. Navigation variance? Increasing. Define increasing." The navigation officer swallowed once, fingers moving through layers of data. "All vessels are continuing to perform autonomous micro-corrections around the center point. The pattern is now stronger than before." "Stronger how?" "They are compensating earlier." That answer landed harder than expected. "Earlier?" the commander repeated. "Yes, sir. As if the ships are detecting the boundary before entering it." Boundary. No one liked that word. A boundary implied structure. Structure implied intent, and intent implied design. The tactical analyst leaned forward. "Can we map the distortion radius from correction onset?" "We're attempting to," navigation replied, "but the shape doesn't hold." "Why not?" Another hesitation. "Because it changes when we observe it." No one answered immediately. The commander finally turned. "Explain that sentence." The officer pulled up 3 layered models over the projection. Each one represented the estimated volume around the invisible center point based on the ship's autonomous course behavior. None matched the others. "Passive observation suggests a spherical displacement envelope," the officer said carefully. "Active scans distort that result. Visual triangulation indicates something asymmetrical. But when we cross-reference live drift behavior from neighboring ships," the officer stopped. "Continue. It begins to resemble a corridor. A corridor to where? We don't know." That changed the deck, because a trap is one thing, a gate is another. The commander's gaze hardened, but his voice remained level. Can it be weaponized? The tactical analyst answered before anyone else could. Anything can be weaponized. Not what I asked. A brief silence. Then, unknown. The human voice had said, "You were given a choice." At first it sounded like a warning. Now it sounded like procedure. The commander clasped his hands behind his back and took one slow step around the table. He was not a reckless leader, but neither had he built his reputation by bowing to the first mystery he encountered. Fleets under his command were not supposed to freeze in place simply because the battlefield refused to explain itself. "Deploy drones," he said. Several officers glanced up immediately. "Probe pattern? Standard spread first, then dense lattice. I want the volume measured from every axis." Within seconds, launch orders rippled across the formation. Small, autonomous drones spilled from belly bays and outer racks, dozens at first, then hundreds. Unlike warships, drones could be sacrificed cheaply. Their purpose was simple: touch the unknown, map the response, and turn mystery into geometry. The forward screens filled with tactical markers, tiny points moving in coordinated vectors toward the empty center of the fleet. For a few moments, the command deck breathed again, not from relief, from familiarity. This, finally, was an understandable act. Test, measure, analyze, reduce uncertainty. It was the oldest instinct in any advanced military system. If a thing cannot be trusted, dissect it. The first wave entered the estimated boundary. Nothing happened. The second wave moved closer. Still nothing. The tactical analyst's shoulders eased by the smallest degree. Perhaps the field only responds to mass thresholds or crude signatures. That would suggest selective targeting logic. "Don't guess," the commander said. "Yes, sir." Then one of the drone clusters stopped transmitting telemetry. No flare, no breakup, no signal distress, just silence. The display didn't even show destruction. Their markers simply dulled and disappeared one by one in a line so smooth it resembled deletion more than combat. "Pull back the rest." The order came instantly, but too late. Another cluster vanished, then another. Then something even worse happened. A handful of drones emerged, not all of them, only 7. 7 units drifted back out of the invisible volume on low-power return paths, still physically present, still broadcasting, still intact. The deck leaned toward the data as one. Status. Telemetry fragmented, meaning they're transmitting internal architecture records, but not in sequence. The commander looked to the data officer. "In plain terms." The officer stared at the stream, confusion tightening into visible unease. Their memory logs indicate elapsed mission durations ranging from 4 seconds to 19 hours. A cold silence settled over the deck. "That's impossible," said Tactical. "Yes," said the data officer, "but that is what they are reporting." Were corruption. That was my first assumption, but physical wear metrics on the drone chassis correspond to the reported durations. Power depletion, thermal cycling, micro-impact residue, they match. No one moved, because suddenly everything looked different. If the logs were true, then the drones had not merely crossed into an unknown region of space. Space itself had behaved differently inside it. The commander lowered his head by a fraction, not in surrender, but concentration. Display visual playback. The returning drone's internal recordings were assembled as best the system could manage. Most were garbage, static, frame tears, sudden jumps, lens bloom, broken timestamps. But a few seconds survived from one of the 7. The deck watched. The drone entered ordinary darkness. Then the stars shifted. Not moved, shifted, like a page being turned behind the fabric of reality. Constellation lines bent into impossible arrangements. Distances folded. The drone's own stabilization program began issuing frantic corrections, as if its frame could not decide which direction counted as forward. Then, for less than 1 second, something appeared. Not a station, not a ship, a structure perhaps, but too vast to fit the category. It did not sit in space, it seemed to define it. Angles intersected in ways optics should not permit. Surfaces appeared both near and impossibly distant, black against black, and yet more visible than any star. The recording froze there for 3 frames. 3 frames were enough. The deck fell silent. "What is that?" one officer whispered before discipline caught up with him. No one answered, because there was no language on that deck built for what they had just seen. The commander replayed the 3 frozen frames, magnified, stripped, enhanced, recolored, relayered. The result only made it worse. The structure, or whatever it was, carried no visible signatures of propulsion, no weapon emplacements, no communication arrays, no architecture consistent with any known species. It looked less like an installation and more like a rule. The human voice returned before anyone requested it. Same calm, same unbearable patience. "You continue to test the boundary." The commander did not waste breath pretending ignorance. "What is it?" A pause. "Then, a place you are not permitted to understand from where you stand." That answer landed harder than expected, not because it was poetic, because it was administrative, cold in a completely different way than a threat, the way a sealed vault might answer a fingerprint. The commander stared into the center point. "You expect us to withdraw based on obscurity?" "No," the voice said. "We expect you to withdraw because you still can." Several officers looked toward the commander then, not openly asking the question, but unable to hide it any longer. Was this still an incursion, or had it become a lesson? The commander ignored their eyes and shifted his approach. "You allowed some probes to return?" "Yes." "Why?" A longer pause this time. When the answer came, it did not sound cruel. It sounded worse. "So you would not mistake silence for mercy?" No one answered immediately. The phrase moved through the deck like pressure through cracked metal, because suddenly the vanished cruiser, the impossible logs, and the glimpse of that structure all aligned beneath a single realization. Humanity was not improvising defensive measures. Humanity was curating information, revealing exactly enough to shape the fleet's behavior. The commander had spent his life mastering escalation, how to pressure, how to bluff, how to break, how to corner another mind until resistance became self-destruction. He knew the grammar of dominance better than anyone in the expeditionary chain. And for the first time in decades, he felt that grammar being used on him, not through volume, not through force displays, through restraint. He looked down at the tactical table again and saw his own fleet the way the human voice must be seeing it. Not as a conquering armada, but as an object still deciding whether it would survive its own arrogance. "Commander," engineering said quietly. He turned. "We are registering synchronized phase noise across several core systems. Cause? Unknown. But it is not damage. It's almost as if our ships are being observed." The commander's expression did not shift, but a dozen officers did. "Observed by what?" Engineering hesitated. "I don't know, sir. Diagnostic routines are being answered before they complete." That changed the deck. "Answered?" the commander said. "Yes, sir. We initiate system queries, and the solutions populate before internal verification finishes. Not false data, correct data, as if something external already knows what we are about to ask." No one moved, because that was no longer a battlefield anomaly. That was intimacy. Something inside or around human space was not merely capable of touching their ships. It could anticipate their logic, and anticipation in war is deadlier than firepower. The commander let the silence stretch. Then he made another decision, not to advance, not to retreat, to speak plainly. "Human vessel," he said into the open channel. "If we withdraw, do you guarantee safe passage out of your space?" The answer came almost immediately. "Yes." "And if we remain?" The pause this time was so slight it felt less like hesitation than courtesy. "Then you will continue converting warning into evidence." The deck fell silent again. No one liked the precision of that sentence, warning into evidence. It implied that every action the fleet took from this point onward would become proof, not for the humans who clearly needed none, but for the fleet itself. Proof that it had been told, proof that it had chosen, proof that what followed would not be a misunderstanding. The commander inhaled once, slow and measured, then the rear tactical stations erupted. "Commander, contact!" Every eye snapped to the aft display. A new reading had appeared behind the fleet. Then another, then dozens. No drive signatures, no approach vectors, no transition bloom. They had not arrived. They were simply there. Shapes without classification, mass without emission. Positioning that mirrored the fleet's own formation at a distance just outside engagement range. Not attacking, not even targeting, watching. Every rifle stopped. Every whisper died. Even command forgot to speak, because the fleet was no longer entering human space. Human space had just closed around the fleet, and somewhere in that tightening silence, the commander realized the most devastating truth of all. The thing inside the formation and the things beyond it might not be reinforcements. They might be parts of the same system, a system humanity had built not to destroy intruders quickly, but to make sure they fully understood why they should never have come. And on every screen, from bow to stern, one impossible fact remained unchanged. None of the new contacts had been detected arriving, which meant they might have been there the entire time, waiting, patient, invisible, human. Part 4. No alarm sounded. That was the first thing that made it worse. Every tactical instinct aboard the fleet expected escalation to come with noise, alerts, targeting locks, power spikes, something measurable, something that could be translated into action. But the new contacts behind them did nothing. They simply existed, arrayed in a formation that mirrored the fleet's own geometry with unsettling precision. Not aggressive, not defensive, just aligned. The commander didn't turn immediately. He kept his eyes on the center point, the invisible presence still bending his ship's behavior from within, before finally shifting his gaze to the aft display. "Confirm readings. Multiple contacts," sensors replied. "Mass detected. No propulsion signatures, no energy output. Range fixed." "Fixed," he repeated. "Yes, Commander. They are not closing distance. They are not drifting. They are holding position relative to us." That answer landed harder than expected, because space did not allow for relative stillness without propulsion. Everything moved, everything drifted, everything obeyed momentum, unless something was actively controlling the frame of reference. What unsettled them most was... The sensor officer hesitated, then continued. "Their position updates synchronize with our own movement. When we adjust, they adjust instantly. No delay." No one answered immediately, because that was not tracking. That was anchoring. The fleet was no longer navigating space. It was inside something that was navigating them. The commander exhaled slowly. "Run full spectrum classification. Attempting no match. Compare against all archived species signatures. Already done." "And?" The officer's voice dropped slightly. "They don't correspond to any known construction logic." That changed the deck. Unknown ships were not unusual. Unknown behavior was. The tactical analyst stepped forward. "They could be autonomous constructs, defensive lattice, distributed AI guardians. Do they target us? No. Do they respond to scans? No. Do they exist in a way that allows us to engage them?" A pause. "Uncertain." The commander's eyes hardened. "Uncertain is not acceptable." "No, sir." Silence returned. Not empty, pressurized, because every second that passed without action made one fact clearer. The humans were not escalating, they were enclosing. The commander finally spoke again. "Open channel. Channel open. This is High Commander Serac. You have deployed additional units behind our fleet." A brief pause. Then the human voice answered, "We have not deployed anything." The words settled over the deck like frost. "That is incorrect," the commander said, his tone still controlled. "No," the voice replied calmly. Your perception is adjusting. That answer landed harder than expected. Several officers visibly stiffened. Clarify, the commander demanded. Another pause. Then, you crossed a boundary where your models no longer apply. The commander's jaw tightened. That does not explain the presence of these constructs. It does, the voice said. You are interpreting structure where there is only context. No one moved, because that sentence just made even less sense. And yet, somewhere beneath the confusion, something else began to form. A pattern, not in the data, in the behavior. The humans were not describing weapons, they were describing conditions. The commander looked again at the aft contacts, then back at the center, then at his own fleet, and for a brief moment, he considered a possibility that did not fit inside any military doctrine he had ever studied. What if, he said slowly, we are not being surrounded? No one answered, because no one knew how to complete that thought. The commander finished it anyway. What if we are already inside? That changed the deck. The silence that followed was deeper than anything before it. Because suddenly everything looked different. The center point was not an anomaly. The rear contacts were not reinforcements. The drones were not being destroyed. The cruiser had not been attacked. Every assumption built on conflict was failing. The commander turned sharply to navigation. Plot exit vector immediate. Vector plotted. Execute. Engines flared. The fleet shifted. For the first time since crossing into human space, they attempted to leave. Not tactically. Not cautiously. Directly. A clean withdrawal. For 3 seconds, the maneuver executed perfectly. Ships aligned. Velocity increased. Distance from the center point began to grow. Then stopped. Not gradually. Instantly. Every ship froze in relative position. Not from engine failure, not from external force, from something far more precise. Navigation spoke first, voice tight. We are still moving, sir. The commander's eyes snapped to the display. No, we are not. Yes, sir. Engines are active. Velocity is increasing, but what? We are not changing position. No one answered immediately, because that was impossible. Motion without displacement, velocity without distance. It violated every operational law they relied on. Confirm visually. Visual confirms stationary. Confirm relative positioning. Unchanged. Confirm inertial drift. None. That answer landed harder than expected, because suddenly there was no direction left to go. Forward led deeper inside. Backward did not exist. Lateral movement only reoriented the same geometry. The fleet was no longer navigating space. Space was defining the fleet. The commander stood completely still now, not frozen, focused. Human vessel, he said. Yes, the voice replied. We are attempting to exit your territory. I am aware. Then allow it. A pause. Then, you are attempting to leave using the same assumptions you used to enter. The commander's eyes narrowed. Explain. Another pause. Then the voice spoke, slower this time. Your species treats space as distance. No one moved. The voice continued. We treat it as agreement. That changed the deck. Not because they understood it, but because, somewhere beneath the confusion, it felt consistent. You crossed without permission, the voice said. That action established the current conditions. The commander felt something unfamiliar press against the edges of his control. Not fear, not yet, but the beginning of it. What are the conditions? He asked. A longer pause. Then, you are here. No one answered immediately, because there was no way to argue with that. The commander looked at the frozen projection of his fleet, at the ships that still moved, without going anywhere, at the contacts that mirrored them, at the invisible center that held them, and for the first time, he understood the scale of the mistake. This was not a defensive perimeter. This was not a battlefield. This was not even, in the traditional sense, human territory. This was a system of rules, and they had entered it without understanding them. The commander spoke again, quieter now. What do you want? The answer came without delay. For you to leave. We are trying. No, the voice said. You are repeating. That answer landed harder than expected. The commander's mind moved quickly now, not tactically, conceptually. If space is agreement, he began slowly, then movement requires permission, silence, not from confusion, from recognition. The human voice returned, yes. The deck did not react outwardly, but something shifted, because suddenly there was a path, not through force, through understanding. The commander straightened, not defeated, adjusted. Then we request permission to withdraw. The silence that followed was absolute. Every system, every officer, every thought seemed to pause with it. Even the rear contacts felt stiller. Then the voice answered, and this time, for the first time, there was something in it that had not been there before. Not warmth, not approval, but something close to acknowledgement. Request received. The fleet waited, not moving, not breathing. Then, granted, everything changed. The ships moved, and this time they went somewhere. Part 5. The moment permission was granted, the universe aligned. There was no flash, no surge of energy, no visible shift in space, and yet every officer on the deck felt it instantly. The fleet was moving, not in the mechanical sense. They had been moving before. Engines were already active, velocity already increasing. But now, for the first time since crossing into human space, movement meant something again. Distance returned. Vectors mattered. Position changed. The invisible pressure that had held them in place, without force, without resistance, simply released. Navigation spoke first, almost disbelieving. We are gaining distance. Confirmed, sensors added. Relative displacement increasing across all vessels. No one celebrated, no one relaxed. Because what had just happened was not a victory, it was permission. That changed the deck. The commander remained still, eyes locked on the projection, as the fleet began to pull away from the center point. Slowly at first, then steadily. Then with increasing clarity as space itself resumed behaving like something they understood. Behind them, the contacts remained, still matching formation, still silent, still watching. What unsettled them most was, the tactical officer began quietly, they're not pursuing. The commander didn't respond, because pursuit implied intent. This was something else. The rear contacts were not chasing, they were maintaining context. As long as the fleet remained within whatever boundary they had crossed, those shapes, those presences would exist. Not as enemies, not as allies, as conditions. The commander finally spoke. Maintain withdrawal speed, no sudden acceleration. Yes, Commander. Do not break formation. Yes, Commander. Do not attempt to scan the rear contacts again. A hesitation. Then, yes, Commander. That answer landed harder than expected, because the order was not defensive, it was respectful. And every officer on that deck understood why. They had tested, they had measured, they had pushed, and every time they did, human space had answered, not with aggression, but with correction. The message had never changed. You are here because you chose to be. You will leave because we allow it. The fleet continued to move. Distance from the center point increased. The subtle distortions in navigation began to fade. Autonomous corrections decreased. Ships stabilized into standard formation without interference. For the first time since entering, their systems felt theirs again. But the silence did not lift, because no one mistook this for normal space. Not anymore. Commander, communications said quietly. He turned slightly. We are receiving another transmission. Source? A pause. Everywhere. That changed the deck. Play it. The human voice returned. But this time, it was different. Not in tone. Still calm. Still controlled. But there was something beneath it now. Something that hadn't been there before. Not authority, not warning. Context. You are exiting correctly. No one moved. The voice continued. You adjusted. That answer landed harder than expected, because it sounded less like a statement and more like an observation being recorded. You were given information, the voice said. You interpreted it. You changed behavior. A pause. That is sufficient. The commander listened carefully, not for threat, for meaning. What happens, he asked slowly, to those who do not adjust? No one answered immediately because the answer was already known. Still, the voice responded. They remain. Silence followed. Not because the answer was unclear, because it was too clear. The commander's eyes shifted once more to the center point, now distant, now fading from relevance as space normalized around them. The missing cruiser did not reappear. No wreckage, no signal, no closure, just absence. And suddenly that absence felt intentional, not destruction, not loss, retention, as if the ship had not been destroyed, but kept. What unsettled them most was, the systems officer whispered, barely audible, "We don't know where it is." The commander answered quietly. "No." A pause. "We know exactly where it is." No one asked him to explain, because they understood. The cruiser had not been lost in space. It had been lost in a place where space did not behave like theirs. A place defined not by distance, but by permission. The fleet crossed what their systems finally recognized as the boundary. Not visually, not physically, but behaviorally. The moment they passed it, everything returned. Stars stabilized, sensor noise normalized, background radiation aligned with known models. The rear contacts vanished, not retreating, not cloaking, not jumping, gone. As if they had never existed, the deck fell silent, not shocked, not confused, just still. Because no one believed they had truly disappeared. They had simply stopped being necessary. The commander remained standing, hands behind his back, eyes forward. Status, all systems nominal, no anomalies. Fleet intact. The words sounded correct. They felt meaningless, because nothing about what had just happened fit inside nominal. The commander finally gave the order. Full withdrawal. The fleet accelerated. This time, without resistance, without distortion, without permission. Or perhaps because permission had already been given. Minutes passed, then hours. And still, no one spoke more than required, because something had changed. Not in the ships, not in the systems. In them. The commander turned once more to communications. Open channel. Channel open. He stood straight, measured, controlled. "This is High Commander Serac." A pause. Then he continued. "We acknowledge your space." No reply came immediately, but this time he did not expect one. Because the message was not for the human voice. It was for whatever had been listening beyond it. And somewhere, far behind them, in a region that no longer followed their rules, something human had already understood, that they had learned, that they would not return the same way again. And that, for now, was enough. They did not speak for a long time after leaving. Not because there was nothing to report, but because no report could contain what had just happened. The fleet moved through normal space again, predictable, measurable, safe. Every system responded as expected. Every calculation behaved. Every law they trusted held firm. And yet, no one on that deck believed they had truly left, because something had followed them. Not physically, but conceptually. The commander stood in silence, watching the stars return to something familiar. But familiarity no longer brought comfort, because now he understood something that had never appeared in any archive. Fear and danger are not always the same thing. The fleet had faced danger before, overwhelming danger, weapons that could erase planets, species that could adapt faster than they could respond, wars that reshaped entire sectors. But this had not been danger. This had been control, absolute, effortless, and worst of all, calm. What unsettled them most was, the communications officer said quietly, almost to herself, "They never tried to stop us." No one answered immediately, because she was wrong. They had been stopped, completely, without force, without resistance, without even raising their voice. The commander finally turned away from the forward display. "Record this," he said. Every station snapped to attention. Classification, human-controlled territory. A pause. Then he continued. Amend previous threat assessment. Another pause. And then, do not categorize as hostile. Several officers looked up, surprised, but not confused, because they understood. Hostility implied intent to destroy. This was something else entirely. Categorize as... The commander stopped for a fraction of a second, searching, not for the right word, for a word that even existed. Then he finished, non-negotiable. That changed the deck, because that word carried more weight than any threat. Non-negotiable meant there would be no war here, no conquest, no victory, only outcomes, and those outcomes would not be decided by strength, but by understanding. The commander stepped forward again, slower this time. Add directive. Yes, Commander. No vessel is to enter human space without explicit permission. He paused, then added, not because we cannot fight them, a longer pause, but because we do not understand them. The silence that followed was absolute, because suddenly everything looked different. Not just human space, not just the fleet, but the entire idea of power. For the first time in recorded history, they had encountered a species that did not prove dominance through destruction, but through restraint so complete it made resistance irrelevant. The commander gave one final order. Archive all sensor data. Yes, Commander. Flag for highest level analysis. Yes, Commander. And mark this encounter. He stopped again, then finished, as incomplete. No one questioned it, because they all felt the same thing. This was not a battle that had ended. It was a boundary they had touched and survived. For now, far behind them, in a region where space did not behave like distance, where movement required agreement, and where silence carried more weight than weapons, something remained, watching, not with hostility, not with fear, but with a kind of patience no military doctrine had ever prepared them for. Because humanity had not needed to destroy them. They had simply shown them how small they were inside the wrong set of rules, and that lesson would spread farther than any fleet ever could. The commander looked out one last time at the stars, different now, not because they had changed, but because he had, and somewhere, deep in the quiet of his own thoughts, he understood the truth that no report would ever fully capture. Humanity did not defend its space. Humanity defined it. And if you were human, subscribe, leave your like and comment below. Humanity stands.